Today's podcast is brought to you by Patreon supporter Tim Grable. If you'd like to learn how you can support the podcast through a small, recurring monthly donation, just log on to schooloflaughs.com/Patreon.
Welcome to the School of Laughs podcast, brought to you by schooloflaughs.com. Whether you're an aspiring comedian, a part-time pro, or a speaker who wants to become funnier, this is the podcast for you. We'll break down tools, tips, and techniques to help you get bigger, better, and more bookable. And now, here's the show.
Welcome to the School of Laughs podcast. Rick Roberts here today. I'm interviewing Joel Byars of the Hot Breath podcast. Joel is an Atlanta comedian who's been at it for 7 years. He's got a side hustle going as a podcast host, and he interviews comics, much like I do, social media folks, just like I do, and we kind of share a same appreciation for just the continuing desire to learn stand-up comedy. And so I pick his brain in this episode about his first 7 years, what he's learned, what his struggles are, and where he's headed. And then next week, or the next time we release the episode, you'll hear him interviewing me, finding out maybe some things about me you didn't know before, because nobody asked until Joel did. How about that? So this week, I'm talking to Joel. Next week, Joel's talking to me. It might sound similar because it's the same two people, but we're kind of switching the focus each time. This episode's fun. I'm going to get right into it. I do want to remind you, though, if you haven't signed up for the big podcast boot camp that's going on October 21st here in Nashville at Third Coast Comedy Club, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. You know me. I got a deal for you. So email me, schooloflaughs@gmail.com, and I'll hook you up with a coupon code that'll knock a good chunk of money off of that fee for you. Definitely shoot me an email and let me know that you want to attend that October 21st. That's all about podcasting, becoming a better podcast host, interviewee, how to get a podcast up and running, or take your current podcast to the next level. Enough with that. Let's get on with this podcast with Joel Byars from Hot Breath. Can I turn the tables on you a little bit?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I wasn't trying to hog this. I just I want to dive in on you, man.
No, it's great, and you cover a lot of stuff that's
good,
important. And if you have any other things on there, for sure, if you want to jump into.
We really hit everything. I've been trying to get better about in interviewing. Like when I used to interview people, like I always have show notes, but I used to just follow like a storyline of like we're gonna go here, 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 and then here. But I found that just weaving it and just making it organic, you usually will get to everything just as it flows, and instead of like trying to steer everything, just letting it flow, and then you find the talking points to insert.
Absolutely. That's something that I kind of learned as I went too, that if you've got a list of questions, that's great. It's almost like Bill Hicks would say about his act. My act is what I go to when I can't think of anything else to say.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
And there are some things you kind of want to know or you want to, glean from the experience. But when you're dead set on going to the next question, not really listen to the answer a lot of times.
Yep.
And I was missing out on stuff, and I would get emails after a podcast. How come you didn't follow up on that?
Oh, those are the worst moments too.
I'm like, oh man, because I was an idiot. That's why. Or I didn't even hear, the question behind the question that they emailed me with. I'm like, I didn't even think that far into it. Like,
yeah.
How'd they get to that spot?
My biggest miss was when I interviewed Aries Spears. And this one still sticks with me. It's kind of like as soon as you get off stage and you remember the joke you wanted to say, you're like, oh, of course. But like as soon as the interview was over. But like I was asking him about like I can't remember how we got to this moment, but I was like, do you have any regrets? And he was like, yeah. And then I missed the follow-up of like, what are they?
Oh, wow.
And then he like moved on. And there was like this split second for me to jump in, and I missed it.
Yeah.
And that's like episode 40 maybe. So like you learn as you do with anything, but that's one of those moments I'm like, oh, I wish I had that back.
Yeah.
Because that would have been cool. Because he's had so many different kind of headline things happen to him. So it'd be cool to hear his like sincere perspective on them.
Yeah.
But oh well, we grow.
So let me ask you, when did you start doing stand up?
I started February 1st, 2010.
2010, so 7 years, 8 years in.
Yep, but a little over 7.5 years now, yeah.
And in Atlanta?
I started in Knoxville at Side Splitters.
Okay.
In Knoxville. Did you ever do that club?
No, a couple times I thought about going over there.
Yeah.
But I heard it was just like, there was good times and bad times over there.
Yeah, this...
But I also knew the guy who was running, not the manager, but the guy who owned the Side Splitters kind of thing.
Oh, okay.
And it could be kind of pretty hit and miss with getting paid. And so at that time, I was kind of doing corporate gigs, and I didn't want to take a week as a gamble of something going down.
Yeah, it was just an open mic. They had a side room, and it was just an open mic that they did probably like once a month or whatever, like on a Sunday night. So I just went, took a couple of my friends, and this was second semester senior year, where like your back's against the wall of like, am I going to follow this business degree, or am I going to follow my dream, which is comedy? It it's in the back of my head, and you're like, well, it's back's against the wall. Might as well just try comedy. You're about to graduate, so you have nothing to lose.
Right.
And then I did it, and like you said, you get the bug. I instantly knew. Like, I didn't kill. There were like 7 people, and they all politely smiled.
Yeah.
And that was enough. From then on, I was just like, this is everything to me.
Do you remember any of your first jokes, like from that night?
I remember because I read the book. It was the green book. I think the Greg Dean's book that has the green cover. And what I loved about that book was it was all about like one-liners and how to write one-liners and that misdirect, because that's the mechanism of a joke, is that misdirect. So understanding how a joke works first. So I'm glad I started with one-liners, and I've grown to be more conversational, but I started as a one-liner. So like I remember my first big misdirect was we had just gone to an event in Knoxville like a week ago, and I was like, college is so weird. I had this bad dream where I was in I don't remember the exact wording, but it was like I was in a disco and there were guys in underwear and flashing lights, and then I woke up and I was at WWE.
Oh, yeah.
So like the misdirect.
Yeah.
So then like that like worked kind of. So then the next month I'm like, here's my big joke.
Yeah.
And then people are like, what? It works once, so you think it's magic. But that was probably my first big misdirect. And then like I'm tall, so like I went on some rant about like how much it sucks being tall and trying to dance with like short girls or whatever. I don't know. It's all terrible is what it was.
I always call it's like your training wheels,
Right. Yeah.
Somebody, I can't remember who said it, but they always like, your act is like a car. It just needs to get you to the next place. And so when you first start off, you're driving a Mazda Datsun or something from 1980 that's missing a couple of rims, and you're just, you've got a donut on the back left tire, and you barely get in there.
Yeah.
About 3 years in, you trade up a little bit and get rid of those jokes or that set or that material. And you got stuff that fits you better as you go, and hopefully at some point you're driving like a Cadillac or something smooth.
Totally. And like you're in like a Bentley now. I'm 27 years in.
Mopeds, but yeah. I'm in something that can hold 2 car seats in case my little girl wants to bring somebody along. When so you started in Knoxville, how long were you there before you went to Atlanta, or were you in Atlanta but you just started in Knoxville?
Yeah, I was going to school. I went to Maryville College, Merville, aka Merville College, and this was second semester of senior year, so I was about to graduate. So I did all the open mics Side Splitters did. They even did like a Wednesday once a month where you would like pay maybe $5 or $10, but you got like a drink ticket or whatever. But I was just any stage time. I was just obsessed from the jump. So I did a couple of shows senior year, but then as soon as I went back to Atlanta, like I moved back to Atlanta, moved back home because that's what college grads do. That's the natural progression. So as soon as I got back to Atlanta, I just started looking up wherever open mics were. Like got on Facebook and was like, where can I get on stage? Where can I get on stage? And then from there, I worked at Enterprise Rent-A-Car for a little while. So I would work from like 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. and then do shows that night and then get back up and do that whole grind. And then was able to save up some money living at home doing that. And then I kind of moved out on my own and then became like a dishwasher and then like waited tables and like delivered pizza and then became like a hotel minibar attendant. Just all supplemental stuff to carry me along the way. Always doing comedy though. Always doing comedy at night. Just obsessed with it. And it's been cool to, if I wasn't performing on a show, I would at least be out watching a show. If I couldn't get on, like if it was a weekend, I would be at one of the clubs at least watching. That's cool. You still enjoy watching shows? Yeah, it changes, doesn't it? Yeah. My favorite part about working like clubs is like working with headliners is seeing what they keep and like what's part of the act. Because some headliners have the same act for like 10 years and they just do it word for word, and then their shows will be completely different throughout. So like, are you familiar with TK Kirkland?
Mm-mm.
He's super big in the urban scene, and that's where I've kind of gotten most of my opportunity is in the urban scene, just because that's where I got on stage. Because what I like about doing urban rooms is it's based on respect. It's not like politics of like, he's funny, but he doesn't have a flannel shirt on, so we don't like him here.
Right,
His beard isn't big enough or whatever. Like in an urban scene.
Can they ever be big enough?
Yeah.
Can we stop with the beards? Let's ask that. Two clean-shaven guys talking.
Yeah.
Enough with the hipster beard, but go ahead.
But it's like, I mean, that's just what I've noticed in the scenes. And, now I perform anywhere, anytime in front of anyone. But like most of my opportunities came in the urban rooms. But like TK Kirkland has this catchphrase that's "Who raised ya?" And he's like, "Who raised ya?" So for like 7 shows, just "Who raised ya?" And then there's a "Who raised ya?" So that's just burned into my brain now. But he's a cool dude. We've done a lot of shows since then. But it's just, I'm always trying to learn. Just like I'm sure, just like you. Still, you've been doing comedy 27 years, and you still have a hunger for it.
Yeah, there's always something you can pick up.
So I'm always looking to learn.
That's cool. What would you just say is your like ideal audience? Like if you could say, this is the group I want to perform for 6 nights a week, who would be in the audience? Where would it be? What age group? All that stuff.
I mean, I want to say everyone, but that's so vague. You know what though? I mean, at Uptown, a sold out Uptown room in Atlanta. Well, Uptown is like a historic urban club. It's probably the oldest urban club in the city. And then we also have Punchline, which is like one of the oldest like comedy clubs. But if you get 400 people at Uptown rocking, that's like riding a wave. And that's primarily black people age, I don't know, maybe like 25 to even like 55, 65. But in like a more general sense, my goal from the beginning was to be universal. Yeah. Like I want to be able to do the same jokes I do at Uptown that I do at Punchline, that I do at a college, that I do at a church, that I do at a bar on a Tuesday. I've always, from the beginning, my goal was to be as universal as possible so I could just entertain everyone. So there's not really an audience where I'm like more I don't know about this compared to I try to approach everyone with the same enthusiasm. But I would be lying if I didn't say I'm almost more comfortable in front of an urban crowd now, just because they're I guess they can be known for booing more or whatever. They're just more real and honest. Like they don't put up with anything false. So you just got to be real. And what I've told comedians and like my students too is like, mainstream rooms are good for writing and urban rooms are good for like developing performance and persona. So like, and that can help build both sides of the comedy, kind of like your weapons.
Yeah, no, that's good. I haven't thought about it in that terms before, but yeah, you gotta be on your game.
Yeah.
And then if you're on your game, they'll listen to your jokes. Whereas the mainstream room, jokes are important, and you don't have to have the most extreme personality to pull them off.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Yeah, I haven't thought about that, but it's true. Who fill in this blank?
Okay.
And I'll fill in mine if you feel it's an unfair question. I have the most difficulty following a comic who is, or their style is like
a magician or a music act. A music act with a killer closer, you're not going to top that. Like if they're doing bells and whistles and all this, and you come up with a couple punchlines, they're gonna be like, "But where's your cymbals and all that?"
Yeah.
Those are tough to follow. Magicians too are tough to follow. So yeah, those would be my 2 instinctual answers. What about yours?
Joel Byars. Hardest to follow Joel Byars. That's my answer. Because I just never know I know it's going to be good no matter what venue we're in. It's going to be tough. So I can't even take him to my best audience. He's going to. I would say probably those 2 are always hard for most people. Isn't it weird too that in the Southeast, I don't know how much you travel around the country, but the Southeast is known for having comics who have musical closers. Mm-hmm. And I think it became part of part of the reason I think is like rooms like the Stardome where it's so big.
Oh, it's a great
that you
room.
need a
Yeah.
big finale almost. You're on a theater type stage.
Yeah.
And of course they have the abilities technology wise to run whatever tracks you need and make it look good and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I typically, it's weird. I almost work, I'd say 95% of the time just by myself. So I welcome any comic, even if they just destroyed in front of me. I'd be like, a brethren, somebody to talk to after the show.
Yeah, that's always when you meet a comedian. You're like, I need to see you perform before I know if I like you or not.
Yeah, I don't know.
Not like, but it's like, I feel like you never meet a comedian until you see them perform. That's always how I approach it. Is like, we can talk in the green room, but I don't really know you till I see you on stage.
Yeah.
I feel like that's when you.
Yeah, I was thinking probably with me it would be regardless of what type of comedy they did or their style, if they were really heavy on short misdirection jokes, because that's at least my first 15 minutes is a lot of that. And the only times I've had tricky troubles with following somebody is when they kind of had that style throughout, and then I step right in with that kind of style. They're like, we just saw 30 minutes of this or whatever.
Right. Yeah. Because that's asking a lot of them to just keep popping them all those laughs per minute, you know?
Yeah, and plus they know that they're going to be, you should have some stories, you should have some short ones, you should have some in-between jokes, whatever you can to kind of keep them off balance. But when they see that 30 minutes in a row, it's just like, it's going to be harder to surprise them because they're going, okay, here comes the punchline.
Right.
Whereas you see a lot of guys now, or more people now, where it's so conversational. It's almost like I almost wish I would have started this way, because when it's really conversational, there is no pause where the punchline is. So if the audience doesn't get the punchline, you're just saying the next sentence.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, they don't know you missed.
They don't know. So you just slow down when they do laugh and then you pick it up. I know a couple comics that are extremely successful and that's their style. And I do pretty well after that because it's a different thing, but they're bigger names and funnier people because they've got that thing. So it's a weird thing.
It's tough to overcome that silence though, like that's, and I'm only 7.5 years in. So that is some time, but in the scheme of I'm doing this the rest of my life, it's still like training wheels, so I'm just now in moments of where like you're in silence and you're like, oh, this is different. Yeah. Where you like you force yourself to sit in it and then you get it. Like I'll still rush. Like I'll still be like, but I want to get to the next joke instead of just like letting stuff breathe and it come in like a tide, But I'm trying to focus more on just the power of silence and how you can use it. But it is scary when you lean into that void,
But luckily there's a lot of it.
Yeah. Luckily, I just made it sound like I'm never funny. I'm really good at silence right now, guys. Yeah.
I've trained my audience not to laugh. It's a whole other level of comedy. A lot of people don't get it. It's kind of Andy Kaufman-ish. Anyway. Yeah. It's funny, man. What's been like a moment on stage where you surprised yourself in some way, like that you either was able to bail yourself out of a situation, or you went on a tangent just trusting that it could lead somewhere and it did, or maybe you walked in a situation that you thought this is going to be tougher than I've ever had and you were able to handle it. Has there been some cool moments like that, I'm sure? Oh,
man. I had one of my favorite moments on stage recently, very recently. I was featuring at Uptown for a comedian Toure, who's based out of Philadelphia, but he brought up like Kevin Hart and like he saw these dudes come up. But it was Sunday show. What I love, what's so funny is you can have a killer weekend, but that Sunday show will creep on you. That Sunday show may be the killer one where the crowd comes back on you. You're like, oh, I'm just going to coast on this final show. I've been having good all weekend, and that's the one you bomb at. So, like, I started out really hot on the set, and I was feeling good from, like, the weekend, and, like, I was doing, like, a lot of this topical racial stuff and just trying to experiment with, like, walking the line, really, and, like, how to go too far and when not, and kind of do that balancing act. So I was feeling good in the set, and I said something about, like, there's definitely, a balance in comedy. And I said something where I completely lost the audience. Like, they just completely shut down. And it was one of those moments, though, where you're doing well, and then you start to feel it, you're losing your grip.
Yeah,
and it starts to fade, and then it's silent, and now I'm talking, and it's silent. And I was only about halfway through my feature set. So I stopped and I leaned like onto the front table and I was like, okay, guys, where did I lose you? Because we got about 15 minutes left and this could go either way right now. And I was just real in that moment, and they appreciated that.
Uh-huh.
And then from then on, I said something like, okay, so what we're going to do is try this again. And let's have a good second half, okay, team? And I was like, ready, break. And then I stood back up and went back into my set, and I got him back.
Oh, that's cool.
That was the first moment on stage. I was fully immersed in the moment, sensed there was a disconnect, and then addressed it. And like, okay, where did I lose you? Okay, I understand that. I went too far here. Let's regroup, come back together, and finish strong. And then I got back up, and they were just with me from that jump. And that was the first moment where I was able to just kind of rope-a-dope them, you know?
That's cool, man.
That felt good.
No, that's good. That is kind of thing that happens when you're about 6, 7, 8 years in, is you've got, you can go back to your jokes, but you also, as you're telling your jokes, your brain can do other things.
Yeah.
Like the first 5 or 6 years, you're just like, what's the next thing I'm going to say? But once you know the next thing you're going to say or shouldn't say, or whatever, you can think in other terms. And it's almost like, I think in my first 3 years of comedy, I never took the microphone out of the stand. I just stood right in front of it. 3 years in, I'm like, I've got arms.
Yeah.
I can use my arms,
Yeah.
So it's like, that's cool, man. So you're moving right on pace, finding the moments and having fun in there.
Oh, that's great, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah. And really from here on out, it's all easy. So you'll.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
the
It's
next
just a
20
cakewalk.
years, at least.
The challenge is what drives me, though. It's just so hard, and it's so inspiring, though, you have those moments. And I'm glad you asked about a moment, because that's what really drives us, is you'll have that one set where every breath works, and you're like, oh, I can do this. And then you have 6 months of nothing, and then you look for that one moment again. And the closer those get, I feel like that's when you see your progress. I did that again instead of 6 months. It was 4 months,
right.
So I just always try to be aware of those moments, chasing waterfalls, if you will.
Yeah.
TLC, yeah.
TLC.
I didn't know if you knew that song.
No, I'm still thinking I should have thrown in a 1-ray or a 3-ray joke when you're talking about 2-ray. I know it's Brother Blu-ray and Hooray. It's just like,
Blu-ray.
I'm not going to say, well, I'm going to say it. I went ahead and did it. I should ask this every episode. I don't think I always do, but what is a struggle that is right now, and you're like, man, if I could just figure out this piece of the puzzle, I can get to the next part, and things would be a little bit easier. But it's like a hurdle or a bump. It just seems like you would have gotten past it by now or something, or it just keeps popping up. You got one of those?
Dude, organization is killing me right now. I don't keep track of everything. I'll do an awesome writing session or whatever on a piece of printer paper, or I'll be writing and I'll be driving and keep notes, or I'll have a great idea that I put in my phone and never look at, or I've tried where I'll have 3 notebooks. I was like, okay, I'm going to do all my broad writing in this notebook, boil it down to the best ideas in this notebook, and then take it to the stage and edit it in this notebook. And I've tried all these different systems, and that is a big barrier right now as I'm trying to up my productivity and efficiency, is just organization. So,
well, maybe you just have one day of the week where you go back and you pull stuff from your phone, from your and you archive it. You get it in Evernote or whatever, and you're revisiting ideas you had and getting them into one spot. Evernote's great because it syncs to all your devices and all that stuff.
Okay, yeah, I've heard of Evernote. I don't have it though.
It's really cool, and you can. I think you get on 2 devices for free, and then the third one it's like $9 a month. I'm not sure, but as soon as you write it in your computer, it shows up on your phone. It's kind of cloud based or whatever they say.
Okay.
But you can tag each joke. So you've got 20 different jokes about dating or being married now or what have you. You just put that as one of the tags, just like you do in a document, And so you say we're going to do a set where you wanted to only work on that particular topic. You can just search by tag, and all those jokes come out of all your different folders into one little place.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So you would benefit from that.
That's interesting. Totally. Yeah.
And just setting aside maybe it's once a month, I don't know, but you just go say this whole day or this 4 hours, I'm going to go in and make sure I get everything off my phone. I'm a little voice memos, get them in print, and then upload them to Evernote so that they're not lost.
Yeah.
And then once they're in Evernote, you can categorize and start to see maybe some connections between material that you would have never put together before. And then I would suggest this too, just while I'm thinking about it, because as you're plugging stuff into Evernote, if you choose this path, maybe you just choose to put them all in one notebook, but whatever it is, look at each joke and ask yourself, what is this joke really about? So it might be a joke about being married or whatever, but in the joke is failure to communicate. There's a communication problem. You might have a joke about a previous boss where that joke is really about not communicating correctly. And you can put those two jokes back to back. You would never think about your wife and your boss. Well, maybe you do. I don't know how your wife runs your life, but your wife and your boss in the same sentence. But there might the emotion or the state of mind that puts you in both of those places to make those stories relevant to you for your stand-up can connect. You could build a bit out of three things that you normally wouldn't think about. Do you know what I mean? Same thing I always tell my students, every joke you write, in the margin, put what emotion you should deliver that joke with. Because we only write stuff about stuff that drives us crazy, that makes us mad, makes us sad, makes us nostalgic, whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. But if you know that, you should deliver the joke with some kind of style and some kind of emotion behind it. So that will up your performance part. But you could tag around 3 or 4 jokes together that are all anger based and put them in the same bit, so you're not angry in minute 1, minute 27, and minute 56. You look bipolar when you're, but if you can stay in the anger for a while. And another thing that makes me mad, boom, boom, boom. You can hit 3 or 4 different topics, but the through line is anger. Or the through line is lack of communication or whatever it might be. A lack of trust, whatever it could be, that drives the joke or where it came from.
Like a painting, like each emotion is a color.
Sure, you can think of it that way.
Interesting.
You could even, if you wanted to go crazy and get 9 highlighters of different colors, just like, then you could visually look at it like I always, this is what I want to do with my organization that we're talking about. I watch Monday Night Football or Sunday Night Football or whatever, and the coaches have all their plays on their laminated sheet, and you can see they've got like yellow plays for when it's 3rd and short. Like I want to put all my jokes into one big laminated sheet and put them up. And when I do my 1 hour special, I'm like, that didn't work. Okay, I've got 30 seconds here to get you. Here's a 30-second joke.
You have like the wristband the quarterbacks will wear.
I'm calling an audible right here. All right. We need 3 guys deep on this one. But just, as you organize your material, finding connections besides just the topic, but the emotion or the state of mind or what puts you in that place to write about.
Whoa. Yeah, I love that because I've found that those are my best jokes or where I'm making connections that aren't on the surface there. Mm-hmm. So that's a great way to find that. Oh, dude, that's awesome. I'm definitely going to do that.
And you can choose whether to even let the audience in on that or not. I mean, you could audibly say, man, this makes me mad, this makes me mad. Or you could just do it, just so that you mentally know what 3 jokes go together, and they'll figure it out.
Yeah.
But that would be one thing as far as getting organized. And as great as Evernote is and digital stuff is, it's probably good to write them all down on an index card too.
Okay.
Because if you can't get to the punchline on the front of an index card, it's too long anyway.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I have them around here. I've got these little index card things, and they've got like a little binder, like your key binder.
Yeah.
And you can just flip through it. And so as I'm working on this new CD, I have an orange version of that. Orange is my like productivity color, right? So if it works, if it's producing for me, it goes in the orange index file.
Whoa.
If it's green, it's new, it's green. So I take that one to open mics and try to get those jokes into the orange.
Whoa.
You know what I mean? So it's but those things fit in your back pocket, fit on your keychain. They're always with you. So if you got an idea for a joke, you can write down a little bit and then follow it up later.
Yeah, I saw Jeff Foxworthy because he lives pretty much by Atlanta, and he would come to the Punchline sometimes on a Sunday and sell it out, just working on new material. Yeah. But he had 3 bins on stage. Have you seen him do this?
Yeah.
He had 3 bins on stage and like a pile of note cards, and he would pull note cards and he would do the joke, and if it kills, he'd put it in A. If it was okay, he'd put it in B, and if it died, he'd put it in C. He would just go for an hour and a half just doing these jokes and then just putting them in the proper bin. And that's how he would just pretty much write on stage. And most killed, but I guess he's listening for certain reactions, right. So it may be mediocre, or like one may die that didn't really die or whatever.
Yeah.
He rarely had one that was a C. Probably like 1 or 2 out of his entire set.
Wow.
But it was interesting to watch.
Yeah, I always like watching headliners back when I was coming up. They would do this thing where a lot of them during the check drop would just tell the audience, all right, you're not going to be paying attention for 5 minutes, so I'm going to try out 5 minutes of new jokes. And they'd literally get an index card, and if it worked, they would, hey, I'm keeping that one, put it in their back pocket. If it didn't, they would crumble it up and throw it on stage.
Right.
But it took me years to realize it was the same 5 minutes of jokes for the past 5 years. It was just something they did as a game. Because I'd see them like 5 years later, and like, oh, this is a new thing. Let's try this out.
Yeah.
But they always had a couple that didn't work on purpose, so they could like get the laugh of it throwing it away. He just gamified it,
Yeah.
And it's pretty funny, man. How much do you travel? And where are your gigs at? How often are you doing stuff? Like 7 years in, and just trying to get a gauge of where you're at comedy wise.
Yeah, all my opportunities, especially out of town, have come from connections. Like I don't have a manager, an agent. Like all the colleges I do are from one of my friends who's in the college circuit who was like, "Hey, you want to come open for me here? Make a couple $100." That's a great gig. So all the work I've done has been just from friends, pretty much, and my travel, it's weird. And that's what I'm finding. It almost comes in waves. 1 month, I may be booked every week. And then another month, I may be booked like a Thursday or whatever. A lot of the stuff, like you said with your students, I'll have students who are like, my friend's in a biker gang and they are having this reunion and they need a comedian. Do you want to do it? You're like, is it safe? Okay.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm performing at an apartment complex next week for one of my students. All local stuff. I have traveled. The farthest I've traveled was Japan. I did Japan. I think it was earlier this year with a couple friends. They had like a military show, and they're like, "Hey, you want to go to Japan and get paid for doing it?"
That's
I was
awesome.
like, yeah, it was awesome.
You were the tallest guy in the country for a week.
Yeah, it was. We literally like flew in. Did the show like 2 hours later and then left the next morning. It was really just a turnaround. We didn't even get to see the Tokyo or anything besides the drive to the base, but it was still cool and you feel like a comedian when you're like, I'm traveling around the world doing comedy. But it's inconsistent right now. I don't have like guaranteed dates. I have sporadic dates throughout this for like the rest of the year, but it's nothing's like blocked off. We're like, I've got all of November locked in.
Right.
I would love that, but it hasn't come in organized yet. Yeah.
Do you put on any of your own shows or have you?
Yeah, I do host a weekly show. Every Wednesday, I host a show at Java Monkey in Decatur, Georgia. I've been doing that a little over 6 years now. So I've been hosting that one consistently.
That's great.
So that's great stage time. It started out as every other week, and now it's become every week. So that's always good. And I'm doing open mics. I still hit that. I found since I've gotten married, you look for the balance more of like, okay, if I'm booked this weekend, I'll lay off of the open mics as much because I'll still do my Wednesday, but I'll maybe skip a Tuesday where you can do 4 or 5 shows.
Right.
If I'm booked on the weekend, but if my weekend's open, I'll hit the week card and then balance it out on the weekend with my wife. So you look for those moments as far as time management, but I'm still as thirsty for the stage as like day one.
Right.
Yeah.
That's cool, man. I'm curious what led you to start the podcast. I mean, talked about it a little bit a while back as far as like just meeting other comics and things. And Atlanta had the hot scene, but the just to get in there and start banging it out every single week. Did you? Let me ask you this. What I'm trying to say is, did you know how much work it was going to be?
No, and nobody does. And I just did a podcast panel with 2 other podcasters, and we calculated it's like 15 hours, like an episode, like from like the idea to researching to even it just taking up brain bandwidth, even just thinking about it, all the way to the editing and all that. It's like 15 hours an episode. But I had no idea how much work it was going to be. I was just inspired because the goal was we had 10 comics on Last Comic Standing. And then the previous year, the comic that won was from Last Comic Standing, Rodman. And then that year, Clayton English from Atlanta won. But I was like, my goal is to interview these 11 people. That was like my goal. And I was like, and if I can do that, we'll just see what happens after that. And I achieved that goal. I mean, it was not easy. Some I had to go through management. Some were like phone interviews, and then like the recorder dies, and then
it's the worst.
Oh my gosh,
my 3 best interviews nobody will ever hear. The 3 best. I mean, I'll tell you later, but it's like,
It happens though.
Yeah.
It happens. But as soon as I achieved that 11, I was like, interesting. I may be onto something here if I could climb that mountain. So I pretty much did those 11 and then took a couple month break of like, I'll do a season 2 soon or whatever. But since I hit season 2 or whatever, I've just been doing it weekly ever since. But it's now at this point, I'm using it as much as my listeners like to learn, I like to learn. How often are you going to be working with a headliner and then you're like, hey, do you want to sit down for an hour and me just ask you how you were on Letterman 12 times? Oh, you got on Conan? That's one of my goals. Sit down and just tell me every step of the way. And do you know the booker for Conan? And will you show them my tape? And like you never, without a microphone, you're like, this guy's kind of pushy. But with a microphone, they're like, oh, this guy cares. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, it's an interesting. The microphone kind of makes it more like official. And you're like, without the microphone, it's like, okay, we've been at Starbucks for an hour, 25 minutes now. This
exactly.
is crazy.
Yeah, I just use it to learn. I love it.
That's cool. Is there any things you wish you would have put into the podcast as far as like a segment or something that you didn't do that you wish you would have? Because I definitely have some thoughts on that.
Like specific segments? No, nothing as of right now. Sponsors would be cool. Or like money. Getting paid. I have used the podcast to leverage certain services or certain events or things like that, but I haven't. I've there's been like a festival that'll come through Atlanta and they'll pay me for like whatever weeks leading up to it, but I haven't been able to like reach out with a press kit and be like, hey, if you're interested, I haven't made that connection yet. So that's something, just when you just break down the time you're putting into it, some sort of return. Like you have a Patreon, and I just started a Patreon just for the sake of, I like how you're like, it's kind of like a tip jar, if you get extra original content you can't get anywhere else and all that. So I just started that, is trying to create more of a community around Hot Breath, the Hot Breathiverse, as I call it,
Which was on my list of questions.
Oh.
Was it Hot Breath because Hotlanta and you pulled that together, or what made you think of Hot Breath?
Oh, man, I was a fan of Fresh Air. And I was just like, what's a quick one hitter? So it became Hot Breath. And then, it all just naturally evolved. Yeah.
That's pretty funny. I thought it was always Hotlanta, Hot Breath, because you're talking about Atlanta comics, but it was Fresh Air the whole time.
Oh, it was just Fresh Air the whole time.
I'm Terry Gross.
Ripped it. Yeah.
I'm going to make you cry about something you didn't expect.
And my early interviews were like, so tell me about that open mic.
Yeah.
What was that boo story you heard about? And the boo story has become a benchmark of the episodes of, even if it's not a comedian anymore, just an epic failure, because I like highlighting the success, but you're nowhere without your failures. Yeah. So failure's the best teacher. So I like to always highlight those in the interviews as well. Something all comedians do is bomb along the way. And I ask all my comedians on here an epic failure on stage, a booze story if possible. And in 27 years, there's got to be at least one gig out there that was just epic failure.
There's only one gig that wasn't.
27 years.
Yeah, it's tomorrow's gig. Maybe. We'll see. We'll find out.
I just do the Barney Five.
I think the one that was on the biggest scale was a New Year's Eve show I was doing with the improv group. We were in Kellogg Arena in Battle Creek. 4,000 tickets. They had us, it's an arena, so they got the floor, they got the lower level. Off of the upper level, they put a stage on scaffolding so that everybody on the other side of the arena could see us, and the people that were having dinner seated on the floor could see us. They could see us. They couldn't hear us very good. We were using the big Bertha sound speaker that's in the middle of Kellogg Arena with a microphone that was feeding back like every 10 seconds. And we're improv, so we're not right on the mics like a comic would be. We're 3 feet, 5 feet away. And so we got through our first 2 sketches, with a little reaction. The third scene that we did was Mr. Know-It-All, where 3 people sit down, they answer a question 1 word at a time. So like there'd be a host, he would get a question from the audience. What's the meaning of life? Mr. Know-It-All, what's the meaning of life? I think that life is all about,
Gotcha.
And you try to answer it. If you answered it even close to, something that sounded right, they would clap and laugh or whatever.
This is all with one microphone?
Yeah. So he would kind of give us, well, I guess we probably had a mic on a stand. So we would give our answer. And then like the second question goes, all right, who else has a question for Mr. Know-It-All? and like from I don't know, as far as you could be in an arena in the corner where it echoed across the entire place. The guy goes, "When does the comedy start?" And the whole place goes, "Yeah, when does it start?" You know, and it was just like Gary Fields, who ran a great club, a couple different clubs up in Battle Creek for many years. He just came on stage and goes, "Guys, it's totally my fault. I should have had you in a different place, mic'd up better. You're done for the night. You still get paid. Go party. It's New Year's. Let's have a good time." And then he told everybody in the arena, he goes, "Hey, anybody that's here tonight, bring in your ticket to my club this weekend. You can see the guys in a real comedy club environment, and it's on us."
Oh, okay.
So, we made out okay with it, but it was just like really in front of 4,000 people. We just yelled at.
Yeah.
That's probably the worst as a group. There's a few just individually where I was doing stand up to where it always comes down to where I wasn't aware of the situation.
Gotcha.
Like there was a guy, I was doing a one-nighter somewhere in Wisconsin probably Wisconsin. And everybody was digging the show throughout the show. The first 2 acts, I get on stage, but there's one guy at the bar that was just talking loud the whole time on his phone, wasn't even looking at the comedy show. And so I'd had it, like the first 2 comics didn't say anything. The crowd was noticeably disturbed. Like that side of the room couldn't enjoy the show. They kept turning and so I got on, I'm like, "Listen, all right, here's the deal. You guys have been real patient. You've been laughing, but I'm not going to keep on going unless this guy over here gets off the phone. What do you guys think?" And they're like, "Yeah."
Uh-huh.
And the guy turned around and goes, "I've got your paycheck." He was the owner of the bar. And I'm like, "We're going to just plow through it, guys." And so
that's how you start the headlining set.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Because I'm a nice guy, but if I see like something not being solved, it gets under my skin. So I just went right after the guy, right off the top, and like it took me a little while to get the crowd back because they were like, "Should we laugh or should we let him talk quietly?" Just a weird deal.
Oh, but you got the crowd.
The crowd was good.
Well, you're Rick Roberts. How are you not going to get the crowd?
Yeah, but
reel them in.
I had an easy feature that week. It wasn't making me work as hard as most of them did.
Totally.
It's cool, man. Well, let me ask you this as we wrap up. Your podcast, Hot Breath, you're over 100 episodes, aren't you?
Yeah, we just passed 100. I'm on like 104 now.
All right. So I want my listeners to go listen to it. But if there was maybe, let's say 2 or 3 that you'd want them to start off with, like, "Oh man, this is really worth your time. There's some good info in this. The comic or whoever was really bringing it, maybe, or just 1 or 2 episodes that they should start with, and then they can kind of get into it."
Yeah, the first one that comes to mind is it's an episode in the 90s. It's with her name is Manu, and her company is called At Your Social Team. She's a social media guru. Like she straight up, like I'm very aware of people's time on my interviews, so I'll be like, "All right," as we're wrapping it up. But she kept saying, "Well, let me tell this one more tip." We ended up going like an hour and a half because she just kept saying more tips. But this lady built up King of Pops. Do you guys have King of Pops here?
I don't know.
It's like a handmade popsicle company that started in Atlanta that's now all over the country. But she built their social media, and she used what she learned there to now do it with small businesses. And she just pretty much gave me like a workshop on like social media and these different tips and different hacks you can use for like Instagram and Facebook and all that. Like broke it down in a very like digestible way.
Okay.
Of like, oh, I can apply this and I can plug this in. It was that has completely changed my social media approach, my whole online identity. It like changed just instantly.
Awesome.
So I would definitely say that one. Which I think it's in the 90s. Let me think. Aries Spears was a good one because he's one of the best impressionists on the planet, and I got him to break down like how like the music of his impressions and how he does impressions. And I'm just sitting here in his hotel lobby, like across from Aries Spears, as he's like going through his like Shaq impression and telling me how he does it. Like that was a cool moment to be involved with. And that was because like I'll be like, okay, he's good at act outs. Let me really dive into how he's good at act outs. Uh-huh. Okay, they're really good at writing. Like Tom Simmons. Are you familiar with Tom Simmons? Yeah. He's one of my favorite comics. Like he can just find humor out of like the Federal Reserve and like they own the money, but he can make it funny. Like you're saying, people have an opinion, but it's got to be funny. Right. He's able to have these opinions and also be funny. And he broke down great writing tips as far as like, hey, I may write 20 and only keep one of them. Like great writing tips on, you go to the analogy aisle and pull out some analogies for this joke, and you go over to this aisle and apply like a callback to it or whatever. So his was really good for writing specifically. Probably for stories, Dan Pasternak. Are you familiar with Dan Pasternak?
Yeah.
I didn't realize, I interviewed him while he was in town for the Laughing Skull Festival. I didn't realize he was like best friends with like Jonathan Winters. Like he was showing me pictures in his like living room of the art Jonathan Winters gave him. He had all these great stories of just legends that he's been able to interview and what he's learned. So he was another good one.
I'll tell you, my favorite is Nick Griffin.
Yes.
Nick was very, he's so funny, but he was like very self-deprecating and like.
That's Nick, yeah.
But I've worked with him several times back in the day at the Cleveland Improv specifically. I think we worked maybe 2 or 3 times together up there. And he would just, every show he would just come out and go, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
I just don't know. I'm like, you just crush. He goes, I don't know, man. Then next week you see him on Letterman or something. And next time I worked with him, man, I saw you on Letterman. Yeah, I don't know, man. I probably won't get invited back. Yeah. Then he would just crush it,
So good.
So good and dark, he was going through a divorce, I think, at the time.
Oh wow,
if I remember right, but he was funny. But he had a great interview.
He was on Letterman like 12 times.
Yeah, he was pretty consistent and prolific on there.
Yeah, and he had that story like Dave Attell. He was like, somebody was staying with Nick Griffin, and Dave Attell was like, "Hey, be sure to open the window to let the sad out," or whatever. Like, I'm sorry, you said name 2 interviews, then I just listed like 5.
That's all right. I'm going to put those in the show notes so people can kind of click through.
But it's just like your episodes. I try to make sure my listeners leave with some nugget of knowledge, at least one. So like that's what your podcast inspired me to do, is really take it as a learning experience each interview.
That's cool, man. Well, Joe, it's been a lot of fun,
dude.
We talked for a while. This might just be a 2-parter.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah,
2 weeks in a row.
That's what I was thinking. Like I'll just do one half one week and then the other half the next.
I'm gonna call you Mr. October because you'll be the 15th.
Oh yeah, because you do it every other
first
and 15th.
Yeah. So we'll just do it that way. That'll be 2 nice episodes there. And if you guys listen to this one first, you don't have to listen to the other one. I'm just talking about myself. But make sure you told an
untold story on there.
I told a few.
Oh
yeah. So
very exciting.
My goal this year is to tell a few more. I don't know how deep I want to get into it, but I know there's comics that go through some down times, and I try to be an upbeat guy, but there was times where I was like, very detrimental to myself.
I'm sure.
So there may be a few episodes where we're like, all right, grab a Kleenex box and let's get into it. We'll see. Cool, man. I'm so happy you came through.
Thanks for having me, Rick. This has been a long time coming, man. I'm a super big fan.
Thanks, buddy. Hard to think that when he was 3, I'd already gone full-time into comedy. Man, I'm getting ancient. Oh, that hurts in so many ways. Oh, can't even tell you. But I'm glad that he's going at it the right way, I think. Learning as much as you can, getting on stage as much as you can, getting as funny as you can, and also learning that the business side of things are really important as well. So I'm glad to see he's focused on that. If you're interested in the business of comedy, just by chance, I do have the October 28th Business of Comedy class from 1 to 4 p.m. That's a Saturday. It's just $97. You're going to walk out of there with a almost 50-page workbook of things you can do to take your hobby forward into a full-time career. So if you're really serious about comedy, that's the day, October 28th from 1 to 4 p.m. in the Hermitage just outside of Nashville. Thanks again for listening. Thanks again to our sponsors. And tune in a couple of weeks where you'll hear Joel interview me. Take care, guys. Stay safe and stay funny.
Thanks for listening to the School of Laughs podcast. If you'd like to hear more School of Laughs podcasts, you can find them on iTunes and Stitcher.com. And don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. For information on upcoming live and online classes, visit schooloflaughs.com. Until next time, stay tuned, stay focused, and stay funny.